morning. It's 8 o'clock and we're ready to begin. We want to welcome you back after our long vacation. And I suppose you have been reading, we have a new 4-part series, What's Happening in 2020 and we want to kind of leave that at hanging. So we surprise you each week with who it's going to be. And we chose as facilitators to begin with DMEA and Elevate. As you know, DMEA is transitioning this year, and I think a lot of us have questions about what is that transition going to look like. And so here's your opportunity to get all those answers. And in terms of Elevate, I know in my case it's when is Elevate going to come to our neighborhood? So we'll see what Jasen has to say about that. Our speaker is Jasen Bronec. He's CEO of Delta-Montrose Electric Association and president of Elevate. He has or is working to transition DMEA power supply to new energy sources. So he's going to talk about that. And he's working to develop fiber to home network that supports both the electric operations and also advanced telecommunications. He has worked in the electric cooperative arena since 1998. He was an engineer at GE, where he worked with gas and steam turbine generation. He has a BA degree in electrical engineering and business administration from Montana State University, and he has a master's in business administration from the University of Montana. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Jasen Bronec.
Thank you. It's always great to get in front and have an opportunity to talk about DMEA and Elevate. And so hopefully today we'll answer some questions. I have with me Virginia Harman. Virginia is our Chief Operating Officer for DMEA. And she'll also be kind of speaking. We'll kind of tag team and trade off as we go through this presentation. I do want to talk about DMEA. I want to talk about how we're going to transition out of our current power supply contract with Tri-State and what that looks like moving forward. And I also want to kind of give an update on where we're going to be this year for our construction work plan for Elevate and our extension into the city. And we're really excited about the grants and the upcoming expansions that we're going to have for Elevate. All right. So first of all, our power supply goals have kind of led us to seek exit from Tri-State. DMEA for a decade has had a different vision and a different goal of expanding local resources, always concerned about rates and rate stabilization, and always wanting to have some flexibility to be able to meet the needs of our members. And essentially, under our current contract and our situation that we were in, we fought that for a long time. And in the last several years now, we've kind of come to the conclusion that to meet these goals and to make that transition to the new energy future and meet these goals that we have of rate stabilization and local generation development and having that flexibility, we really needed to take a different direction. So we're going to talk about that. So the future is here. We've reached a settlement with Tri-State, and we are prepared for a May 2020 exit. So on May 1st of 2020, we're on track to be able to say that we're going to now start taking electric service from a company called Guzman Energy. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about Guzman a little bit later, but we're going to talk a little bit about the exit fee. Essentially, our settlement agreement with Tri-State achieves all the goals of exiting under fair and reasonable terms and conditions. We had 20 years remaining on our contract with Tri-State. And with that 20-year commitment, we had to make whole the rest of the membership with Tri-State. And so we agreed to pay and refinance essentially with another wholesale provider. What that allows us to do, we're going to talk about what that does for us. One, it stabilizes rates for us into the future. It allows us to develop local renewables, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to see almost over 20% of our own resources, our own needs, being produced locally here in Montrose and Delta counties. And following the exit, we'll be able to advance all of those goals. And I think I feel pretty good about that, and I think we're going to see the benefits of economic development and ability to have kind of control our own destiny. Let's talk a little bit about Guzman Energy. Guzman Energy is based in Denver. They have a number of relationships with other cooperatives across the whole country, not just locally in Denver, but locally, what they've been able to do is work with cooperatives like Holy Cross. And Holy Cross is a neighboring cooperative in Glenwood Springs. They were able to work with them and provide some of the power supply and some of the arrangements that Holy Cross needed to make. They also work with a New Mexico co-op that was another Tri-State member called Kit Carson in New Mexico. And they also provide power to the city of Aztec. That's just the local ones. Regionally and across the whole country, as you know, that transition is happening not only at DMEA, but now other cooperatives in the state of Colorado are really looking at what those opportunities are. So the largest Tri-State member, United Power, right outside of Denver, Brighton, has also asked for the same question. What is it going to take for us to change our power supply contract with Tri-State and our arrangement? La Plata and Durango has filed with the PUC to ask that same question. What do we need to do to be able to follow DMEA and make that same transaction? Across the whole country, it doesn't matter. In other markets, really the same opportunity is there. And there's co-ops that call me every day to say, what is this? How do you do this? What have you done? How do you take the steps to lead your cooperative to that new energy future? I think what you'll find is that even though we're changing our power supply parameters and where we're going to get our power from, we'll still be served over Tri-State's transmission system. We'll still be a customer of Tri-State, where that reliability and that ability to keep the lights on, we still will have a network service transmission service agreement with Tri-State that will allow us to continue to have access to power across the whole market, and the same reliability and resiliency that we're used to. I think in the end, the power supply really will help strengthen our co-op and strengthen our future for our future and future of DMEA. I think I'm going to turn it over to Virginia. She's going to talk a little bit about our rate stabilization.
Good morning. So now what we want to do is kind of explain to you how we think that this transition will help you personally, right? We're talking about rate stabilization, we're talking about flexibility, and we're talking about local generation for DMEA and what that means to us, but what does it mean to you as our members? And the first piece that I want to go over is rate stabilization. So that has been our number one priority throughout this process, is how can we stabilize our rates rather than continually seeing increases, which we were seeing with our power supplier Tri-State. We wanted our new contract to have some stabilization built into it, where we didn't see continual wholesale power supply cost increases. With Guzman Energy, what we have and what we've locked in and what we're agreeing to right now is a 12.5-year contract with Guzman that's at a fixed rate. So instead of a rate that can change every year, like our current contract with Tri-State, it is set and fixed right now moving forward for the next 12.5 years. That provides a significant amount of savings over the current power supply contract with Tri-State. So with that savings, what DMEA is going to be doing is, because we've gotten that question a lot, okay, you're saving all this money, what are you going to do with it? How's that going to help me? Our goal is not to decrease rates, right? Our goal is not that everybody's power bill is going to drop suddenly. Our goal is to stabilize it, to keep it lower than it would have been had we stayed with a more expensive power supplier. So we'll be using those savings to purchase transmission assets from Tri-State, and that's been out there. People have heard about that. There are pieces of that transmission system that we will be purchasing from Tri-State. Those are pieces that serve just DMEA's load. And then also we are going to be using it to increase our ability to interconnect more renewable resources, right? So we talked about the new power supply contract having the ability for more resources locally, and some of that savings will go towards those types of efforts. And we will also be using that savings to help ensure that your rates remain competitive. So that's to help pay off, long-term interest, that's to help pay off depreciation of plant, all those continuing expenses that go up regardless of who our power supplier is. This savings will help us balance that off to keep rates more stable and more competitive than they would have otherwise been. So the next slide just kind of shows you where our rates stack up. I know it's impossible to read this from a distance, but these two graphs show our rates currently. So these are our residential rates. The blue line right here is where DMEA stacked up compared to all the different utilities across Colorado, not just cooperatives, but investor-owned utilities as well. So this is where our rates stacked up prior to our recent rate increase that went into effect a couple months ago. And the yellow line is where our rates are now after the rate increase. This is our residential average. So as you can see, the red line is the median across the state. We try to keep it right around the median or a little bit below. So we feel very comfortable and proud of those rates. And then next is our large commercial rate class. We have lots of rate classes, but these are the two we thought you guys would be most interested in. Again, the blue line is where we were prior to our rate increase, and the yellow line is where we were after the rate increase. And these rates that we're showing here from all the other utilities are from 2018, so prior to any rate increases that they would have implemented at the end of 19 as well. So the next piece, if you want me to keep going, Jason? Okay. Do you want it? Okay.
So one of the things that DMEA has prided itself on was developing our local resources. And of course, we have developed the South Canal hydro projects over the years, and that's been extremely beneficial for DMEA members. But as we all know, we were limited to a 5% cap on our ability to develop any more local resources. I think it's important that we take advantage of a lot of our local resources and opportunities for economic development reasons and also stability for our cooperative, that we look at those local resources. And so now under our current contract, we would look at having our local renewable generation just above 20%. So that's our starting point. In the next 10 to 12 years, we'll start to scale in additional generation, and past that 12 years, then we have that flexibility to continue to do more. In the first tranche of our ability to make this transition, 20% seemed to be a very good number. Typically that can be anything like waste gas off the coal bed methane from the coal mines, or it could be anything from additional small hydro generation and predominantly solar generation and solar type of projects. So what we're doing now is under our current wholesale provider, that transition to the future is to make that transition slowly and calculated to where we have more renewables, more local generation. As you can see where our current status is, we have about 5% local. We have some renewables that are in Tri-State's portfolio. But as we make that transition, our goal is to push those blue bars and green bars further and further to the right and have more local and renewable energy control. Increased flexibility. We know right now we ran into that in our in our current contracts where it's dictated by 43 other members, and every time that we want to promote electric vehicles, or we want to promote battery storage, or we want to do something for our membership. We're stifled on how we can do that and how we can accomplish that. Within our current contract, our new contract, we are going to have more flexibility, and especially for economic development, being able to set rates to attract new loads, to attract new economic development. We'll have some of the lowest rates across the region that we'll be able to offer to attract those new loads and those new businesses. And we're excited about that. We're excited about coupling what we've done with Elevate and opportunities that we have there. And now another catalyst will be to have some of the lowest cost power in the region to attract businesses that need that. So governance, I use this analogy of in our current situation with the G&T, a lot of co-ops that are larger co-ops wanting more local control, which DMEA has always been one of those entities that wants more local control, want to control your own destiny. Really, when you're part of a large G&T that covers 4 states and 42 other members, your say and your vote to be able to make change or set policies or promote something that's important to you becomes very difficult. And so now that relationship is not to be part of that bigger organization, but to be part where you have more of a power supply, it's a commodity, it's more local control. 70% of our costs at DMEA come from power supply costs. And so now, by those 70% of those costs are being managed by the G&T and by Tri-State. Now we can control that 70% of our costs for our own needs and through our own board. This is just a quick timeline. We've been working on this for a long time. I think the bottom line is we're very close to our end target date. We're on track to actually make that full exit from Tri-State on May 1st. So before I open it up for questions, I'm going to make a quick update on where we're at with Elevate and what we're working on there. With that, we have about 3 grant zones that we qualified through the state of Colorado that qualified for, I think, around $1.8 million worth of grant funding that we received for those 3 grants. There's one in Crawford, there's one in North Delta, and there's one that's on West Spring Creek or West Montrose area. With that, we'll be building those grant zones, but we're also happy to announce that we're going to actually go ahead and finish out the entirety of the city of Montrose. Now, that's about 97% of the city of Montrose, so if you're in the city limits, there's just a couple pockets that are difficult to get to that we're going to be working with the city, hopefully, to find creative ways to get to some of those pockets. But Brown's Ranch and American Village and all of those that are in those areas, we will be starting construction in June of this year to start to complete those and provide service. And we're really excited about that. It's been a long, drawn-out process for us to get to this point. Currently, Elevate has about 7,000 customers across our service territory. We've covered over 50% of our meters, and we're continuing to grow that. We've become cash flow positive this year. We're hoping to continue with that, and we look to become net income positive in the next couple years. So the business plan is working. We're following our pro forma. We're meeting all of our financial goals. We're moving forward to develop and expand the network as rapidly as we can. One of the things that's kind of stifling our ability to actually get service into more of our rural areas is the fact that we've been really slogging it out with grants. On the federal level, we've been denied some of the grant opportunities on the federal level, and really that's tied to the fact that some of the mapping data that's used to qualify for those grants are saying that our areas are already served. So when we submit those grant applications, they look at this 477 mapping data through the federal government, and they say, oh, this provider's already serving, this provider's serving, and we know better. So we also have a way that we're working with Scott Tipton and Corey Gardner and some of our legislators to congressmen to kind of fix that mapping data. In the state of Colorado, we've been also getting grants through the state. We're very, very appreciative of all those grants that we've gotten. It's helped us build, West Montrose and North Delta and Crawford and a lot of areas. But that still needs to be fixed too. We're kind of fighting that battle, and it kind of comes back to also this mapping data and available funding and what's the best type of technology. So as we move forward, we're still looking and fighting for those grants, but we're also looking at new technologies of exactly how can we serve all of our members and meet the needs of all of our members. So we continue to work as hard as we can to meet that goal to get everybody service. So with that being said, Kathy, I guess we'll open it up for questions.
So if you have a question, for those of you who are new, you have to have the mic. Don't shout it out. Everybody needs to be able to hear you. So we'll start in this part of the room and work our way.
Until this
Yes.
notion came up in 5 years ago, I had never heard of a power broker. What kind of a capital structure does Guzman Energy that will enable it to perform for 12 years or 20 years?
So there's a lot of power marketers out in the marketplace as energy is a commodity. So you have companies like Cargill and Uniper and Shell, JP Morgan. There's all these different companies that we could have gone to or have opportunities to go to in the future that have the ability to deliver power across the transmission system, allocate and resources that come to us to provide power to our membership. So it's not a new concept. It's a new concept because we're a cooperative, and a majority of the cooperatives and in that space have always gone through a G&T to get those services and provide that energy. As far as Guzman entering the market, yeah, they're relatively a new company. They've been in the market for now 5 to 6 years that they've been providing services. You ask, well, how does DMEA know, one, whether Guzman's going to be there, and what happens if Guzman goes away, and what securities do we have? In our contracts, that's where we work really hard to make sure we have letters of credits, we have security backing, we have warrants that make sure that we're made whole if something were to happen and they were no longer to exist. Then we are back and we're on the market, but the market today is different than the market that we've seen in the last 10 to 20 years. And the opportunities for other providers to come in and fill that gap, I'm very comfortable that they're able to do that. And as we develop more local resources to fill a lot of our needs, we're able to back that up with local resources.
Another question.
Well, in the same vein, what is the mix of energy production that Guzman has, or are they all bulk purchasers, or how much coal, how much renewable on their side?
So right now, DMEA has 7 to 8% of their own resources that we supply that comes out of the South Canal. That counts towards our amount of different renewables that we have in our portfolio. We're looking to integrate to over 20% of new local generation to be integrated into our portfolio. And predominantly the portfolio of power marketers is they're out to get the cheapest resources that they can get. And so we balance between the need for renewables and our portfolio, and we believe in having that and having local generation, but we also want to make sure that we get the least cost resource delivered to DMEA. Typically, what that's going to be is maybe a wind project off the eastern front of Colorado, the east slope of Colorado coming to us. It might be a solar system in New Mexico that they're buying power out of, or it could be cheap excess power that's coming off of a plant from Comanche, or coal plant that comes from the Front Range that's still operational. So it'll change as time goes on. We set a target that we want Guzman to be around at least at a minimum 40% to 50% of their portfolio should be renewable energy, and you stack that on top of our 20% and our 8%, we start to get more heavily renewable.
Sir, in terms of Elevate, is the service area of Elevate the same as DMEA's service area? And what's the relationship between Elevate and the various local ISPs?
So predominantly our service area, we focused on our footprint of our electric service territory. We had an opportunity to test the market, and we built into downtown Delta for the business districts and into their industrial park that serves the hospital, and we're looking to try to serve the schools within Delta County, and their main school district offices are in the city of Delta. So there are some, but predominantly what we're doing is we really focus on our service territory. We don't have any plans to move to Grand Junction or try to serve Ridgeway or move south in any of that. We've got enough to make sure that we try to get service to our own members. Relationship to other ISPs, we gauge that by our crowdsourcing website. We build when we get enough people interested in an area and saying our membership telling us we want the service, then we go and build it. We know that we have competition within our service territory with other providers. We recognize that we'll never get 100% of the market, but in a lot of areas, Paonia and in Montrose, we're seeing take rates that are above 60%. And even in Montrose, our average take rate right now across the whole service territory is sitting at about 42 to 43%. And it's growing. We install about, I think we're up to about 50 a week. We're installing new services, and that's without any current additional building that we've done. So we've just continued to increase our take rates.
Yes, I was happy to hear that your plan is to provide Elevate service to the city of Montrose. Can you tell me again what the target date for that would be?
So we're releasing bids right now. Tomorrow we have a pre-bid meeting. We'll select a contractor at the end of this month. Priority is we've got these grant zones that we have to kind of construct first because we're on a shot clock to get those done and qualified for the state of Colorado. So the city of Montrose is more looking in kind of fall to just be safe, where we'll actually be bringing service in and hooking up people. Is that correct?
Could you describe the three-phase requirement as it regards residential development, and if there's a plan to expand three-phase service in the valley?
So as we see more subdivisions go in, subdivisions that are greater than 5 lots, our engineering department, to make sure that we stabilize our operations of the system and we balance our loads across those 3 phases, back to our substations so that our system runs as efficiently as it can. When we have developments that keep expanding and they're greater than 5 watts, you have to come into those developments with 3-phase power so that you have the ability to split that load up on your system. And so hence, it's a technical requirement. It's a requirement by the Rural Utility Services that we design our system in such a way that it's going to run as efficiently as possible. So the policy for DMEA is that when there's a new subdivision, we come into that subdivision, we have to have 3-phase at the boundary of the subdivision so that we have options to be able to expand that subdivision to make sure that our system runs correctly. Coordination of devices, fault detection, balance of load so that our transformers run more efficiently. That's the reason behind that. DMEA currently has a policy that growth pays its way. We're not investing in real estate. We're not speculating in subdivisions. If the service is needed to be there, this is what it's going to take to put that service in to be able to develop that subdivision. That is a policy. Policies can change. Different arrangements can happen. But periodically our board reviews that policy on an annual basis and makes determinations of how they're going to move forward.
Other questions?
Why is it that you promise 1 gigabyte speeds with Elevate, but using your router connected to your fiber, one on Wi-Fi obtains less than 20% of that speed, and even with an Ethernet cable connected directly to the router, which no one does anymore because everybody uses Wi-Fi, you still don't get close to 1 gigabyte speeds? Why do you overpromise and underdeliver on speeds?
Well, that is a very, very good question, and sometimes I wonder that same thing, but there is a technical reason for it. Number one, the maximum speed that you're going to get over Wi-Fi is anywhere from 300 to 500 megs up or down. That's a phenomenal speed. And the other thing is why you might not see those same speeds when you hook directly with an Ethernet cable is actually the limitations of your computer that you're running the speed test on. And so we do provide gigabit speeds. Like any internet provider, speeds are going to fluctuate up and down a little bit by demand. But I'd be more than glad to send a tech person out and show you that, listen, it's either a computer issue, a switch issue, or it's Wi-Fi, which is never going to actually meet that gigabit speed. You actually have to physically be connected with an Ethernet cord.
As a follow-up?
Okay, and then it's somebody else's turn.
With your television service, my TV is 4 feet away from the router, and one of the things in your advertising literature says that you have no buffering problems because it's so fast. I not only get tired of looking at the little thing going round and round in the middle of my picture and missing a chunk of the program because it says that it got disconnected, but in addition, it just doesn't function correctly.
That is one product that I'm going to stand up here and say that I'm not as proud of as I'd like to be. We're working on it. It's a new technology that we're trying to stream live TV across a network. And so it's like having a fire hose for every channel to come across a full-on network that we're having trouble managing. Not because our network isn't good enough, it's really management of the platform of where we're receiving that signal from. So we pay a company called Mobi TV to provide that platform for us, and then the content that comes and streams across that platform, which is coming clear from Atlanta, is is their it's their product and it's their feed coming into the system. Now that's no excuse. We're trying to fix it. There's ways that we're trying to either put in caching servers that are local so we don't have that buffering issue. For us, we felt like we needed to provide a product that would be comparable to a cable TV product. But I'll stand here today, there's a lot of products out there and for probably less money. We don't make a lot of money off of the TV product. In fact, we barely break even. It's something that we want to provide for our membership, but we also want to encourage people to have a good experience. And so, you know, if the experience still isn't what you want it to be, you know, Hulu Live is a great product that's just come out. There's different options that are coming out. There's Sling TV. There's a whole bunch of over the top. None of them are perfect. The only way that we could have made that product perfect was for us to build a head end, a TV head end here in Montrose at the tune of $12 million. And I wasn't going to do that for video. The video sector and video content is rapidly changing, and how we use and view video is changing, and it's going to be different. And for those that want the traditional cable TV look, that is going to be more costly and get more and more difficult as time goes on. So to answer your question, I appreciate the question because it's a great question. It's something that we're not proud of at this point, but we're working on it. We're hoping to fix it. And we are also looking for other solutions for members to be able to also get video services through other platforms and encourage people to do so.
Other questions?
Thank you. The latest thing is 5G regarding phone. How does DMEA play into that?
Because we have a vast fiber network, I think there's a lot of opportunities there. Believe me, we're looking at those opportunities in different partnerships that we might be able to make to leverage our fiber network. There's some issues with 5G. A lot of people don't like the propagation of millimeter waves and maybe what that does for health reasons. I've already fielded some of those questions from our membership. To have 5G actually work in a city of Montrose, I've been told that you'd have to put up 1,000 microcells to actually get that level of service. And it doesn't go through a brick wall, so when you're sitting in an office like this or a building inside and you have a microcell outside, you're not going to get 5G sitting in here. Now there's going to be a lot of 5G devices that come out utilizing our gig speeds finally, hopefully. How we do that and how we partner with that and how we enable that either through our network or a partnership with somebody else in a network, we're still exploring, but it's still in its infancy, and unfortunately it's a lot of hype, and the only places you can get 5G are in the NFL cities at best, and it's really for the big stadiums and such. I would just love for my cell phone to actually work in Montrose.
Looking at the transition from Tri-State to Guzman, what do you see as the biggest risk in that transition?
That's a good question. One, we mitigate risk through our contractual relationships and having letters of credits from their financiers and things that make sure that we're made whole. The energy industry is transitioning and changing, so I don't know if whether we're with a contract with Guzman or we stay with Tri-State, there's risk right now in the market. So some of those risks that we have with Guzman are same risks that we would have had if we actually would have stayed with Tri-State. I feel like I can manage those risks a little more better for our membership by being with Guzman. And those risks are things like, you know, as much as we might all want to see coal plants shut down for the environment, and that's a good thing, there are consequences on the stability of the grid and our ability to plan, and holes that are going to be created when you shut down all of Craig to the north and you shut down all of the generation in Arizona to the south and Springerville and in the Navajo Nation. We're left in a big hole on the western slope, and so at some point that creates an opportunity but also a risk of how do you replace that capacity and what are you going to replace it with to make sure that long term we have enough resources here to be able to cover our needs. So that's the risk that I see right now that we really keep focused on moving forward. As you see these resources being shut down, how do we continue to plan to be able to make sure that we have the capacity we need locally?
Thank you for coming to talk to us.
Yes.
Thank you for coming to talk to us. I have an Elevate question. I live in a subdivision on the south side that is very slowly getting to your magic percentage. I don't know if we'll ever make it. One of the things that would seem would make it more inviting was if Elevate offered an a la carte option. There are 200 some north number of channels. There are about 10 that I have any interest in. Why should I pay for 100 and whatever channels I will never look at and obviously are influencing my cost? Does Elevate now, or have you considered in the future offering an a la carte plan?
So video programming I've had over the last couple of years, frustration, beating my head against the wall. It's an archaic industry. A lot of times if you just want Fox News, you've got to take 20 other channels with Fox News to get Fox News. Okay? We have to buy those. And we have to buy them. We can't just say we want Fox. I mean, we could just give you Fox News and charge you what it costs for all 20 channels and then shut the other 20 channels off. I mean, that's kind of what it boils down to. But they've learned the game that they've got popular channels that they bundle with unpopular channels so that they can charge more and actually sell those channels. So that's unfortunate. I think what I see in the future, instead of people scrolling through your guide that you're used to scrolling through, we are actually going to get to a point where you're going to be scrolling through your apps to be able to switch channels. You're going to switch channels by apps, not by going through a guide and clicking on a channel. You're going to get the Fox News app. You're going to pay $2.99 to have that app, and that's how you're going to watch that channel. You'll watch CNN a la carte. You're already going to watch HBO and Showtime and some of those types of channels a la carte. And we'll provide the local channels so you'll get the local news. We already do that. That's so you can just have local only. And we're looking at ways to kind of unbundle those a little for some of our sports channels like AT&T Sports or Altitude Sports. And maybe that's a way that we could just offer up a sports package for those that just maybe want a sports package to get to. But the way that we view TV, we're fighting against different demographics of one end of the spectrum, people that want their traditional cable TV, and on the other end of the spectrum where my kids that never know what cable TV is or what a guide is because they're watching YouTube TV, right? So we are just having a struggle because there's not a real ubiquitous way that we should do it, and we can't spread ourselves thin trying to be all things to everybody. Right now the TV program is one of those things that we're trying our best because we do have a pretty large demographic that still wants a cable TV type of solution.
I have a question that kind of backs up to what you said previously. I read in the paper that Guzman wanted to buy the Craig power plants and that they were going to convert those to natural gas, which is available in the area, and that Tri-State said, we're not interested in selling. If they close them down, which they've done 2 of the 3, I think, why wouldn't they be interested in selling?
So we were party to some of that ideas and transactions. It was actually called Project Al Green. Guzman had capital lined up to actually go out, purchase the Craig stations, shut the Craig stations down, and replace those with natural gas. I guess short and sweet of it is, when you look at all that, it's financing, it's cost of capital, it's a business transaction, and I think Tri-State said for the cost of capital for Guzman or somebody like that doing it at investor level capital costs, they think that they can do it for less money. How they make that transition, how they do that, either way, you stay with Tri-State, there's going to be pain in making that transition. We kind of capped our pain by paying our exit fee and saying we're out, we're going to go do something different. That's exactly what that's exactly what Tri-State's doing. They're just doing it on a larger scale. We wanted to know what our costs were going to be. Who knows what those costs are going to be moving forward.
You mentioned that Guzman has flattened the rates for you for the next 12 and a half years. Are we going to see that same level of stabilization at the residential rate level?
That's our hope. DMEA has not seen any load growth in the 5 to 6 years that I've been here managing the company. But yet, cost of doing business keeps going up. Labor costs go up, material costs go up. And so that's the balance that we have to have. If I have some load growth and we see some development, we see some load growth, then I can definitely stabilize rates and make things happen. In the transition to Guzman, in our financial forecast, we project no load growth, and barring any catastrophes or unforeseen consequences or big ice storm or a fire, God help us, anything like that, we should be able to see our rates stabilize for a considerable amount of time. That's our goal. But I can't stand up here and say that I guarantee it, because I don't know what could influence our rates long term.
I have a follow-up question to that. After looking at what's happening on the West Coast with PG&E, and they keep pointing to the fact that they didn't upgrade their transmission lines, are we in a similar situation, or what about our transmission lines?
So I think transmission lines or distribution lines, we have a very robust vegetation management program, and we also continue to make investments in our plant. Even though we don't see any growth, we continue to invest in our plant. We change out our poles, we upgrade our system, we take care of our system for our membership. To say that we won't ever have a fire or create a fire is, we try to do the best that we can. We fight with Forest Service and BLM because we have a right-of-way. Sometimes a tree that could affect our line is outside of our right-of-way. And so we're trying to make sure that if we recognize a tree, we're working with BLM and Forest Service to be able to cut those trees down. We're aggressively saying instead of trimming trees, we're actually taking trees out because of that, because of the fire damage. Just this month, we'll be part of a process with the Public Utility Commission talking about best practices of vegetation management and maybe how the state can help utilities if you follow best practices, that there's some limits to liabilities and some limits to maybe a fund that would help cover in case of a fire. But with all of that, one of the costs that we see is we've had to continue to increase our liability insurance for fires. And that's another cost that we see going up, and we're trying to control that by finding ways to work with the state to try to limit the amount of money that we're spending in that insurance.
So my son lives in California, in south of Los Angeles, and he put in a rooftop solar system, and it had a 20-year payout. The state of California made some requirements about nuclear power stations, and they closed the San Onofre power station. His 20-year payout changed to a 2-year payout, so he paid the whole thing off in 2 years. So the question I have for you is, what is the future of like residential solar, commercial solar that are generated on site, and how does that affect your business plan?
So we have over 700 net metering accounts on our system currently for a combined capacity of about 3.5 megawatts, which is about 4% of our capacity for DMEA. We still support rooftop solar. If a member wants to put rooftop solar on their home and they think that that's a good business decision for them, helps them stabilize their rates for whatever reasons that they want to do that, we will continue to make the interconnection and support that and make sure that we make that available. My hope is that we can do it better and cheaper for our members by controlling our costs and having renewables on a utility scale that are going to be less expensive than somebody individually putting it on their home. So my vision and my goal is to make sure that we remain competitive, we remain relevant, we remain cost competitive, so that people, if they're doing it for cost competitive reasons, that we're going to be the better choice, and that's where we're headed. Now there's a lot of things that are, as we come into the age of electric vehicles and how you couple electric vehicle charging, maybe with an in-home solar system and battery storage and some of those different things. We're still looking at all those and what that means for us as a cooperative. We want to make sure that we're partners with our members in those ventures and as we move forward. And I think it's exciting times for a lot of that.
Yes, with all the increased tensions with the Middle East recently, and the different threats of different types of retaliation, how secure is our power supply and the internet supply in the U.S.?
I don't know if I could honestly answer that question at a national level. I know from DMEA and our perspective and Elevate and our operations, we periodically do penetration testing and security testing. But I'll say that the probably the weakest link in anybody's security is probably us as a person. It's somebody dropping a flash drive in the parking lot and somebody coming into your network and saying, I wonder whose flash drive this is, and plugging it into a computer, and now all of a sudden you've got a virus that's wiping out your system. That's the problem, and we train and we educate and we do everything that we can to make sure that we remain secure. And on our end, as far as the bulk electric system, the Western Area Power Administration and Tri-State and big utilities like Xcel Energy that also provide transmission services, I mean, they're bound to very strict standards, and I think we do the best that we can. And I think from from that perspective. I think there's always risks there, but definitely we take it serious, and I know other utilities take it serious.
Thank you.
Quick follow-up to the question about solar. Could you very, very briefly summarize your net metering policy, how an individual homeowner, how you handle that?
So our net metering policy is first and foremost, we follow the state statutes of net metering. We actually go above and beyond the state statute, where we allow up to 25 kW system to be placed on a home. The idea of net metering is that you size the system to whatever your load is. It was really never meant to, in the philosophy of net metering, was that you would overproduce and become a producer. A lot of people have oversized their system and put it onto the grid. Even though under the state statutes of net metering policy that a utility doesn't have to purchase that excess generation, DMEA does. And the only thing that we do is we say, what is our avoided cost? What cost did we avoid? And we give that back to the member for producing that electricity. That way, existing members that don't have net metering aren't subsidizing the ones that do have net metering. And so we try to do that, even though net metering really, in all honesty, is a subsidy because you're getting retail rates back for wholesale production of electricity. So we try to manage that, but at this point, that's the policy and that's the state statute.
Thank you.
I have the mic here. Jason and Virginia, thanks for coming over, and appreciate you taking time to give us the straight poop. And my question is really for my own curiosity. In your service area, how many families, members are off-grid?
We don't know how many are off grid. Sorry, Bob. No, what we really have a number of is the number of net metered accounts, like Jason said, and we're nearing 700 on that. So that's what we have a count of. We really don't have an anecdotal account of how many are completely detached from our grid. I know of 2. One works with us.
Thank you.
Sorry, Bob.
Any other questions? We have time for just one.
Apparently, one of the main reasons that DMEA wanted to break away from Tri-State is to be able to work more beyond the 5% limit that had always been placed on them. And you mentioned during this presentation that you're working on new technologies. What are those new technologies, and how far are you going beyond that 5%?
So our goal is to have 20% local generation. So you will see, we want to have the most economically viable resources to keep our rates as low as we can. And right now, just be honest with you, probably the local resource that would be developed to accomplish that would be solar. And it'd be probably solar coupled with battery storage. So solar and storage, so the new technology that I talk about is really the storage technology that's ramping up and coming around to be more cost effective.
I guess we can do one more, and there were several over here.
How are you financing the buyout from Tri-State?
So the exit fee is actually coupled into our wholesale power costs. Okay, so it's a reassignment of our power supply contract from a 20-year contract to a 12.5-year contract assigned to Guzman Energy So it becomes an off-balance sheet type of transaction that allows us to have that coupled into our power supply costs. So our power supply cost goes from 8 cents a kilowatt hour down to an average of less than 6.5 cents day one.
Thank you.